Hi, my name's Paul Tilstone from Festive Road, and today I'm in conversation with Koreen Barbara from McDonald's. Koreen, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
That's my pleasure. Where are you located today? You're at home working, is that right?
I'm home, based in Chicago, doing well, staying happy, staying safe, staying healthy, and which is all we could ask for at the moment.
Yeah, marvellous. You were just telling me there was a shortage of desks and chairs because everybody's homeschooling. Yeah.
Yes.
I hope there's a local IKEA nearby and they're going to be stocked up very soon.
Absolutely.
So thanks for joining us. We've asked you on to talk about how McDonald's and you personally as their global travel manager have approached the return to travel. And we've asked you to pick one of the components from the managed travel model. Before we get to what stage you're at, what component have you chosen from the managed travel model?
Sure. Today we've chosen engagement and communication.
Great. So we'll come back to engagement and communication in a minute. Give us an insight into what phase are you at in that return to travel?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say we're at a stage where we are getting ready to operationalize. We have advise the business of the stage that we're on at the moment, which is phase one, which is basically people are not permitted to fly on an aeroplane at the moment or stay at a hotel unless they are given approval to do so. At the moment, phase one of travel basically means you can drive in your car for up to 3 hours to your destination, do what you need to do, and then drive back for 3 hours. Those that are given permission to stay at a hotel, as an example, for 1 or 2 nights, are those folks who are our franchise business partners or operational associates who need to go into the restaurants and support the restaurants through specific initiatives that are going on with the new way to operationalize the restaurants with COVID, or things that we're focusing on, such as drive-through and mobile order and pay at the moment. So with that, they are given approval from leadership from US operations. And with that, we are seeing an increase in hotel bookings because they are needing to drive further, because they cover areas such as remote locations in Montana and Texas, or in the Northeast, as an example.
Okay, so that's phase one, and you're at that phase one. What does there's a phase two, I imagine?
Yeah, sure. Phase two is when the wider population is given permission to travel in their car and stay at a hotel, as an example, maybe with a bit less of that senior leadership approval. So at the moment, what we're doing, as we only have very few people given approval to travel, we are making sure that when the masses are permitted to travel, our return to travel guidance is where it needs to be in relation to engagement and communication.
Okay, which is why you've chosen engagement, which we'll come to in a second.
Correct.
So another piece of context, just talk to me about travel sits under global business services. Is that
correct?
Yeah. And you have sort of a very defined, I think you call them your North Star, your guiding principles. Just talk us through that a little bit as well.
Sure. So everything we do with our business plan and our priorities for McDonald's Travel sits under our GBS priorities. They, for us, it's 4 things. It's the customer experience, it's service excellence, it's digital enablement, and service growth. So for us, it's, yes, cost saving is part of that, but it's not the be all end all for us. And you'll find that a lot of our priorities align with our global McDonald's priorities. You'll see it as a corporation. We have really shifted in the past few years in making that McDonald's experience fantastic when you go for those delicious moments. So it's a matter of, upgrading our mobile application, making sure our drive-through experience is great. Our food remains delicious. For travel, it's really focusing on that end-to-end experience from the time somebody knows they need to go on a business trip to the time that they need to go home and fill in their expenses. We really look at, and especially now we've stepping back a little bit and mapping out that customer journey, knowing that, okay, this is what our people have told us 6 months ago, pre-COVID, in a survey of where they feel our customer journey can be better. And now that we are in the midst of COVID and things have changed, we're also taking into account, okay, what else do we need to include in that customer journey. So it's really mapping it out section by section. Digital enablement is also very important to us as McDonald's, as a corporation. Our mobile app is thriving, and it's something that we heavily rely on for order and pay, as an example. So for us, it's a matter of how can we create a one-stop shop business travel experience, or should I say source of truth for our travelers while they're on the road. So we've partnered with a company called Roadmap, who have created a white label application for us. It has a very McDonald's look and feel to it, and everything and anything related to our travel program is on the application for our employees to feel supported along the way.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think when your North Star, as you called it, applies even in a COVID era,
yes.
It clearly does, then you've got the right North Star to kind of keep fixated on, which is fantastic. And I love the way that that's applied to the business travel program.
Yes, and the purpose is, we don't want to overwhelm our employees, but we want to make sure that each step of the way they feel a touch point, they feel supported, and they feel informed.
Yeah, okay. So your return to travel, we were talking prior to this, it's sort of, for me, you're one of the first ones I've come across where there's an extra layer of complexity, which is it's connected to return to work. But return to work isn't just an office for you, it's the delivery of a restaurant service, which is, considerably more complicated in many ways, as well as the return to travel. So you've got these three components going on. Why did you pick engagement as the topic that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, sure. I think engagement has been really important for our travel program. We knew there was a gap, and we've been working for quite a few years to bridge that gap. To me, in my whole career, it's been very important to make sure you keep travelers engaged, but also help them understand the why of what we do, why it's important. So to me, that engagement and keeping them informed and educated has been important, because a lot of things will change. You and I know our industry has been devastated by what's been going on, and there's a lot of people that are not as close to it as what we are. So I believe it's our job as travel managers to be that voice, to be that educator, to help them understand travel is going to look a lot different. There will be a lot less hotels in the marketplace. There will be mergers in the marketplace in relation to travel agencies. The flight you used to travel on once a week may not be no longer. It may be earlier. It may be later now. The whole ecosystem does look different, and there will be expectations that we will expect of you as well as our partners. So for me, that communication is going to be important to make sure that our employees are prepared when they do get on the road again.
I love the use of the engagement to set expectations on all sides. It's from the company's point of view, the supplier's point of view, and importantly, the traveler's point of view. Because I think you're right, is some people are in a bubble, aren't they, where actually business was momentarily affected, but then it's kind of come back to normal. And I'm not sure that everybody gets exactly the extent of the impact on the travel sector.
Correct.
What sorts of forms has your engagement taken as you've embarked on that sort of process?
Yeah, sure, Paul. So we're looking at three forms. I talk at three themes as an example. To me, it's pre-travel. So, hey, take care on your trip. Here are some things you need to know. So we've started to draft up a communication that we ideally want to automate. So as soon as somebody books a trip, the P&R will trigger a communication to the employee via our travel risk management company, basically informing them, travel has changed. You've booked a trip. This is why you're getting this communication. This is some guidance for you. This is what you need to know. And then contact information from McDonald's Travel, our team, but also our travel risk management team. I think travel risk management don't get the kudos or the exposure that they need until something happens. So what we're trying to do internally is raise their profile working alongside of them. So then the next part of it is during travel. So talking about when they are traveling on an airline or staying at a hotel, we've worked with Roadmap to have specific pop-up messages that come up to help them along the way, again, to help them know what to expect before they jump on an aeroplane, check into a hotel, whatever it may be. And then lastly, the theme is welcome back. So post-trip, we know travel looked a little bit different. Tell us what you thought. At the moment, because our volumes remain quite low, what I have been doing is reaching out to those employees on the phone, and we have a 15 to 20 minute conversation. I ask them 6 or 7 questions, learn a little bit about why they need to go on their road, why they need to go on the road, what their role entails, and then how they felt about the experience. Could we have done anything better? And it's been very successful. They've appreciated the reach out and the insight. And certainly for us, we've learned a few things that we need to add to our guidance. So those are the 3 themes that we're looking at in our communication: pre, during, and post.
Now, I imagine there'll be some people listening to this conversation thinking that, wow, to spend the time calling some of your travellers and spending 15, 20 minutes talking with them, that's a lot of work. How do you, it sounds like it's very beneficial, and certainly we always recommend that having those one-to-ones, getting the voice of the customer, getting the anecdotal stuff rather than the statistics is really important. How do you determine who gets a call and who doesn't? What is it?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, our volumes are manageable. Okay. So what I've been doing, I maybe, like last week, I had like 5 calls in the week. This week I had 2. So I manage it based on the names that you start seeing in the reports. You're like, okay, I've spoke to that person. I don't need to speak to them. So when you see new names, I send an email, I introduce myself, I share the reason why I want to have a discussion. Some people will get back to me, some people won't. For those that do, I then arrange the call. And it's been really insightful, to be completely honest, to understand the why people need to travel. It helps you learn a lot more about your business.
Yeah, which is really important as we come out of COVID, isn't it? It's the big debate we're having about where does travel bring the most ROI. Yes. And is it fair to say that because you're still in the early days of that return to travel, that actually the people you're interviewing are a fairly senior level within the organisation as well?
But the folks that I'm speaking to, they are our franchise business partners and our operations associates. So what they do, they support our owner operators who run our restaurants and help them make sure that the new operations that need to be implemented in relation to PPE and safety, so on, are being implemented correctly, and support them along the way. Also making sure our staff are okay, and if there's anything that they need. They're also helping with initiatives to help operationalize things such as drive-through, mobile order and pay. Because if, we are lucky as employees, once a year, we need to actually have 4 hours in a restaurant to understand the operations of the restaurant. So as they were speaking to me, I understand it. If you've ever stepped back and just watched a McDonald's restaurant, as you're ordering, it's a well-oiled machine, and there's a lot of effort that goes into it. So having the opportunity to do that, I understand what they need to do and why. So, they are folks that need to be in the restaurants, be with the owner operators. Our operators are face-to-face people. There's some of these things you can't do on Zoom. So that's the reason why they are given permission to travel, to support a lot of these initiatives that are supporting our bottom line at the end of the day while we go through this, but also to support the people in the restaurants. Okay.
So I like the way you've sort of placed the engagement pre, during and post-trips, very logical. Each of those steps is almost, has an importance for a different reason. But the on-trip seems to me, it sort of fits your customer experience, digitization and continuous improvement really well. So at the moment, you've got pop-up messages sort of one directional to the traveller. Mm-hmm. How far away is your thinking off of getting that to being two-way communication, almost automated satisfaction or concerns that they have and that type of stuff? Is that on your development map? Is that something you'd love to see?
Yeah, sure. So we've spoke with Roadmap, and they are looking at something called traveler manager messaging. It is in development at the moment, and that what that will allow us to do is to send a blanket message out to those that have the application. So they're working through that and keeping us updated. Something that you do raise that was that came out of the conversations I had with our employees who have started traveling was about sharing information such as what they're seeing with hotels and the airlines that somebody raised. So it's something that we don't do currently. We have a McDonald's travel page for Yammer as an example, but that's me driving a lot of those messages. So maybe that's an evolution for Yammer. But for now, it's certainly on our radar, but we're not quite there yet.
Okay. And those conversations that you're having one-to-one with the travellers after they've travelled, where you're sort of assessing the return on that trip as well as all the other components, does it give you any sense of the likely future demand of travel for McDonald's?
It basically tells me that our people that are currently traveling are very comfortable traveling. They've had nothing but kudos for the industry and what the industry is doing, especially the hotels, because most of our people are driving their own car and staying at hotels at the moment, and they're feeling very safe. They're seeing the differences that our partners are putting into place to keep them safe. So for now, everybody that I have interviewed feels very comfortable, no hesitation traveling. Our travelers we are a traveling community. We, as part of our culture, we enjoy that face-to-face engagement. And, funny, we are getting emails slowly but surely asking about the phases or what are we doing. So people are really itching to get back on the road, but are also very respectful of what leadership has put in front of us to say, look, we're at phase 1 at the moment. And, with that, the next move is determined by triggers. It's determined by the science as such that we follow like everybody else. And, human resources and our travel risk management team work very closely with legal as an example before they move us to the next phase.
Okay. And you've talked about engagement with the traveller pre, during and post-trip. How has your engagement manifested itself with internal stakeholders within your business? I think you mentioned before actually the instigation for the return to travel was about working with the legal department, I think, and also with the suppliers, with your external community. How have you gone about engaging with them as well?
Sure. So internally, the travel, the halt to travel, the return to travel, I think initially there was legal, human resources, communications in our travel risk management team that were very heavily involved in the crisis talks initially. There were a team of, I'm not sure how many to be honest, but that got together several times a day and obviously helped initiate the initial listen, we're not traveling communication to the business. Now that we're in a phase of getting back to normal as such, the gears have shifted slightly where I think the focus is on us as McDonald's Travel to operationalize what we need to do. And we're getting ready for that as such. So, the decision on the phased travel and when that shifts absolutely sits with leadership, human resources, legal, etc. But when the gears do shift and we need to get it back to normal again, that's when we come into place. Because at the end of the day, we get into the weeds, we know what needs to happen with the online booking tool, whether it be with our partners, we understand what our communication needs to look like because we're a lot closer to that.
It's almost like when you described if you ever order a McDonald's and you watch what goes on, just how strict the operation is. Your job is to make that same thing happen, but within travel. So ultimately, when the product is delivered, it's done so in a smooth way and for the right reasons.
Yes, and it was a learning curve, to be honest. But you know what? At the end of the day, we had to rely on leadership to make those decisions and be respectful of that. So then when it came to our partners, we kept them informed on a very regular basis as to where we were with our phases, the direction that the company was giving. And, they've been very accommodating. We've touched base probably every few months with a call or email, whatever it may be. So that's how we've managed those partnerships as needed.
And the insights that you gained from the travellers, have you found any data like themes or important components that it's worth passing on to the supplier community?
Certainly the great job that they're doing. That's something that I will be passing on to them. So through that, it's their efforts have been welcomed and are thankful for their efforts. Certainly internally, we've learned a few things that we need to add to the guidance. And, for those who are on a similar journey to us, where you're only permitting road travel with maybe a hotel stay or two. So, things like the internal sharing of information was something that they came up with. The second thing that they shared with us was, we used to sit down for breakfast, have a buffet, and then go ahead and do what we need to do. We can't do that anymore because, the hotels have closed the buffets and maybe giving a breakfast box and a coffee, and off you need to go to your room. For some people, that may not be sufficient depending on their diet or preferences. So if our employees are not going to McDonald's for breakfast, one person said, I had to accommodate and make sure I allow more time for the breakfast that I want, as an example. Someone also shared that as people are driving and maybe driving through more remote areas than what they used to, it's a matter of, this is going to sound really funny, but planning your rest stops. Because, if you're driving remotely, there's not going to be a restroom within every 10 Ks, as an example. So we're thinking of links or maps that we can give people to have as a reference to say, okay, if you're driving from San Diego to Las Vegas, as an example, which was one of the women we spoke to, here is a link for you to be able to plan your rest stops along the way. And also, planning for snacks, because you are driving more remotely. It's making sure that you are prepared in your car to have the snacks that you want versus relying on gas stations that may not have anything sufficient, as an example. So little things like that you laugh at, but it's actually very valid.
Yeah, it's a case of because people are doing things differently.
Yes.
Actually, unless you think properly about stuff,
yes,
the likelihood of missing something like that is, yes. I do it every time I drive to my grandfather's, which is 4.5 hours away. I always think there's going to be another stop at about 30 miles when I need it. Of course, there never is. So I'm forced to stop somewhere where I don't like the stuff that that's on offer. And so, yeah, it's a very valid point.
Yeah, and a lot of these people now are driving. Someone I spoke to yesterday who was based in the Northeast, he covers a region that's 11 hours from end to end, but now he's driving a lot more versus flying. So it's, thinking about those accommodations that they're having to make. And now, instead of working in the lounge and working on the airplane, they can't do that anymore. So the time, that productive time it's taking away to ensure they're safe, it's a give and take at the moment for these people.
Okay. What I know you use the permissible travel framework as a guideline, I think would be the way to describe it. Are there any lessons that you got for travel managers watching this who are going through the return to travel planning or about to start, either about the use of the framework or anything else that you've thought about?
Yeah, sure. So the use of the framework was really, really great for us. And I just want to thank your team for putting it together and thinking of us as a community. For us, we knew the direction we needed to take. Myself and my colleague from Travel Risk Management worked quite closely, and we actually sat down and went through line by line of parts of the framework, especially at the start, and really to make sure that we were on the right track. And we were in some parts we had to step back and think about it for a little bit and the direction that we were going to take, or, topics that we had to think about, we may need approval for this sort of thing. So that's where it helped us. It kept us on track. For someone like me who's very process driven, it helped the thought process a lot better. Parts of the framework that were very helpful for us included the return to travel survey questions, as an example. We had some that we had drafted. We used some from the framework to complement some of what we had. With that, we have decided that we'll probably do the survey a little bit later as to when travel really picks up and we need that automation. But for now, it's quite manageable for me to be able to sit and have a discussion with our employees, and I really enjoy that, so we're keeping that. So, and also the permissible travel sorry, I can never get that right. That definition also helped us a lot. In relation to lessons, what we did learn is that the plan is fluid and it's going to change. You know, what we laid out 4 weeks ago is certainly going to look different from 4 weeks ahead, as an example. What we did learn is, due to the size of our corporation, there are different functions that may be involved that you wouldn't have thought will be involved, or that you may have a back seat versus a front seat, as an example. So it was a lesson learned just to make sure that you inject yourself at the right time.
Yeah.
Especially with knowing what you are directly responsible for. And for us, I think as a travel manager community, it's that operationalize where our expertise is going to be needed. So I just say be patient with the process, know it's going to be fluid, and really inject yourself at the right time. That was my lesson.
Yeah, and very valuable lesson. Do you envisage the questions in the permissible travel framework? Do you envisage going back and repeating the exercise in some components, or you think you've moved on from that?
I think we continue to look at it. We continue to learn from what you've put out. We continue to learn from what other partners have put out. And what we've done is we've taken some of that. So where it relates to duty of care, where it relates to communication, travel policy, etc., we've put it into our own Excel sheet, as an example. And what we've done, we've used a traffic light system to say, okay, these are ideas that the industry has come up with to say, this is what you potentially are going to need in your program. So we've said, okay, green is we currently do it now. Orange is something we're working through, and red is, we don't do it. So yes, we are going back to your framework, and also something we've put together as we've learned from the industry, and making sure that we have what we need that suits our program as such. So, the other lesson that I would say is use what our industry is bringing out. We're all on a lot of calls at the moment. Everybody is educating each other. There's a lot of white papers out there. Spend the time to read, take parts and digest it, and really think about it. Does it suit our program or not? To be able to, take your program to the next level, as cliche as that sounds, but to where it needs to be when we do return back to travel. To me, that constant learning has been very valuable.
From what you've said on this call and our previous calls, I expected nothing else from your answer. I love that what you've done, if I can summarize it, is you've taken the best of what's out there. You've made it fit for McDonald's and your needs. You've aligned it to your North Star, your overarching corporate objectives, and now your job is to create exceptional operationalized versions of what's there in a very McDonald's way. And I think that's really smart, joined up thinking. So thank you very much for sharing your insights with us today.
No, that's fine. And you know what, like everything, Paul, this is going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint. So a lot of that learning that we're doing and that tweaking, sometimes you need other functions to help you, and that takes time. And we get that. So it's a matter of being proactive and trying to put it into place. Yeah,
it is a marathon. It's I think probably a couple of months ago we realised that was going to be the case, but we're in this for the long haul, and we need some stamina and resilience to get through it. Well, thanks for joining us today, Koreen.
No worries. You're welcome. Take care.
Okay, thank you. So don't forget to visit festive-road.com to access the permissible travel framework. We'll have more in conversation with videos released over the next 2 or 3 months to the end of 2020. In the meantime, have a great day, and thanks for joining us.